Another day, another Brock Purdy contract update, but this one from Dianna Russini raises a lot of questions that we're going to try and answer on today's Gold Standard podcast, brought to you by BetUS Sportsbook and Casino. What is good, everybody? Welcome to the original Gold Standard podcast on the Gold Standard and the Fans First Sports Network. I'm Rob Stats Guerrera. He's Levin Black. It is Wednesday. How's it going, Levin?
It's going. I'm on nights. That's my answer. If I'm on nights, it's going.
Cranky Levin, sitting there in his cardigan sweater, just ready to be mad at the world.
I'm not gonna lie. Forgot that we changed our day. I get up at noon. I woke up and I looked at my phone. And I was like, oh, Rob wants to do the NFL show at 1. And then I saw you sent me some stuff about Purdy. And I was like, oh, right. Never mind. It's not make up the NFL show that we had to cancel yesterday. It's actually my day to do Gold Standard.
Yeah, sorry about that. My daughter needed to go to the doctor to get checked out, so we couldn't do the NFL show. So we'll mix in some Super Bowl talk at the end of this show. But today we want to talk about what Dianna Russini said about Brock Purdy's contract. She said this a couple of days ago. I didn't realize it. I just found it, so that's why we're talking about it now. It was in the Athletic.
You saved it for me. That's what it is.
Honestly, I didn't. I don't care enough about you to do that. It's from the Athletic Football Show podcast. There's a couple different things in there about the Brock Purdy contract. There's 3 pieces of audio I want you to hear. Here is the first one. This was just sort of her general reaction when she was asked about it.
I think there are some concerns from some people that this isn't going to get done. And I don't know if that's because they're not sure what that number is going to be, or if they think that there's a problem, or perhaps maybe the 49ers want to flirt with Kirk Cousins. But from everything I know, both sides are very committed to getting this deal done. In fact, I think they're going to begin working on this very soon. This isn't something they're going to be pushing off, that we're going to be dealing with, or discussing during training camp. I think this is something that they're both in line with. Let's get the ball rolling on this and figure out, where are we going to land on a number? Is Brock Purdy going to reset the market is the question. Is that the number his agent's going to ask for? And is that going to be a number that the 49ers are going to be willing to pay? And I don't believe that that's the number at $62 million, well, let's just say for this example, or $65 million, they're going to want to do.
So, okay, there's a couple things in there. First of all, and if you have a reaction in the chat, please let us know. We'll get to as many as your comments as we can. The stuff about Kirk Cousins, like right off the bat, she scared the hell out of me.
I don't see Kirk happening. I think if things get testy, if initial offers are way off and Purdy's camp is playing hardball right off the bat, and free agency comes, I think maybe the Niners try to leverage Kirk, like bring him in for a visit, right? And do that as kind of a mutually beneficial thing, right? You bring in Kirk Cousins, you announce it. Purdy goes, uh-oh. And also, other potential Kirk Cousins suitors who are real go, ooh, we need to move on him quick because the Niners make a lot of sense. Maybe something's going on there with Purdy. And so Kirk gets a benefit for coming in for a visit and making it public.
Well, also, like, the Niners don't have any other quarterbacks on the roster because the other 2 are free agents. Like, would Kirk Cousins would he come as a backup and think to himself, hey, maybe I can steal this job, or if Brock gets hurt, I know Kyle loves me. Like, is that a legitimate thing that he would consider? And if he would you want him here, Levin?
If he wanted to accept that role, absolutely. I think that would come with a massive pay cut, which I don't think he's going to be willing. The only way I see that happening is if no team comes forward offering a starting gig. But I think some teams will. I think there will be teams out there that say, hey, look, you're not going to make a ton of money, but we're offering you the chance to start again. We'll give you a 1-year deal where if you prove what he said, that his arm was the issue, that his arm was still hurting, then he can go into the market as a true starting veteran quarterback next offseason and try to get, $40-50 million again. Somewhere like Cleveland I think would make a lot of sense. Cleveland says, hey, we can afford to give you like a $5 million deal that's incentive laden where you get up to like 20 million. You come in, you're the unquestioned starter. We'll send Deshaun on his way or tell him to just stay away. You can rebuild your market.
The only thing is Kurt's not a free agent. Kirk is not a free agent. He's technically under contract from Atlanta. So they got to, are they going to cut him?
Yeah.
Are they going to trade him? I don't know.
I don't think he'll have a trade market at all. So they're going to have to cut him, and they will cut him.
That whole mess in Atlanta is their deal and their problem. But what she said about like still want to flirt with Kirk Cousins, I was like, man, like people in the 49ers have seemingly, according to Dianna, like agree with what we've said is like the flame won't die, right? Like Kyle still has that affinity for Kirk Cousins.
I didn't take it that way because she said that some people out there are saying that this could take a long time, that it could stretch on. And she said, I don't know where that's coming from. I don't know. And then she theorized possibilities of why people are saying, ooh, this could go on. So I don't take that as somebody from the team told her something like that. I take that as there are people out there who are not insiders who don't know that both Purdy's camp and the 49ers are saying, we want to get this done now. And she's theorizing the possibilities for why they're there. I think it's obvious why they're there because Purdy's situation is a bit unique. Major injury history, right?
Yep.
That could blow out at any time. A little bit of a weaker arm, so it's not like he's exactly can afford to have an injury limit him in any way. And you have the way this last season went, putting in question marks for him. So now you go, all right, he's not an obvious reset the market, but at the same time, based on the amount he's won, the fact that he just set the franchise passing yards record last year, different things like that, he has the ability to try to demand a reset the market contract. So if Purdy's camp is saying, we're going to reset the market and we'll wait it out, then yeah, this could theoretically become a long thing. But I think insiders know that must not be where Purdy's at.
Well, so listen to what Dianna said about Brock, because I think that's relevant to what you just said.
I don't think Brock Purdy's sitting there going, I'm demanding and I want to be the highest paid quarterback. He's not. I think if Brock Purdy, if it was up to him, he'd probably make a little bit more than he is now, as long as he can drive his Toyota. I don't think this is the type of player that's in this to be the richest man in football. I think he just wants to be paid what he's worth and continue to try to improve and get them a Super Bowl.
Here's what I want to know. Is she saying that because that's what she's hearing from sources, or is she saying that based on watching Brock Purdy at a press conference? I wish she had clarified, because if she's just going off like the Brock that we have seen, I don't think you can do that. I think the way somebody conducts themselves at a press conference could be totally different from the way they handle their business.
Yes, I mean, that is possible. Brock does strike me as, and I'll say it this way, as best as you can judge from press conferences and how he holds himself up and things like that, the things he says, one of, if not the most likely person to say, I don't need top market. I just want enough and spend the rest on the rest of the team. You know what I mean? Kind of like the Tom Brady situation, especially with, here's the thing about Tom Brady's contracting. People love to say he always took team discounts, right? That's somewhat true. What Tom Brady did is he constantly re-upped so that he could get a new signing bonus, so that his cap number would be small, and people would say, oh, he's taking a team discount. But in terms of actual pocket money that he was taking, he was near the top, if not at the top, depending on the year. So it's not exactly realistic. But I will say that I don't think he resets the market. And I think it's more likely that he says, give me 50 million and we'll call it good, and I'm set at that, than it is he digs in and says, I'm resetting the market.
So there's one other little factor in all of this. And by the way, Moonman Ed, thanks for the comment, says, I hope this gets done before the draft because I don't want to delay this any longer. We all hope it gets done. I hope it needs to get done.
I hope it gets done before free agency, so
right.
We know exactly how much they have.
That's what I think too. So there's one other part of this that could potentially be a fly in the ointment. Let's say Diana's right about Brock, right? Okay, he's not concerned with being the highest paid guy, Great. The 49ers don't want to reset the market. Great. The other factor is the agent. And I think Dianna makes an interesting point about Brock Purdy's agent, Kyle Strongen.
Brock has a younger agent, a newer agent, so to speak. He's been doing it a while, but doesn't have a lot of big name clients yet. And this would definitely be his biggest deal. So I wonder how that factors into it, right? Because you have professional gains here for him as an agent to try to get his client the most money he possibly can so he can continue to show other players around the league, like, look what I can do for you. How do you think Drew Rosenhaus started? So I'm interested to see how the negotiations will go, just knowing that could be the advantage, depending on how you look at it, for the San Francisco 49ers.
So there's two parts of that. I thought it was a really interesting point, right? Just in taking the Brock part out of it for agents, like big contracts, new contracts are a huge deal for agents because it's the announcement to the world, right? Hey, look what I got for my guy. And like she said, look what I can do for you, for anyone out there that may be thinking of switching agents. That's why when the contracts get done and the numbers immediately come out, they're always the inflated best case scenario numbers, because that's what all the players see on Twitter. Like, oh, so-and-so got, 89 million guaranteed, whatever it is. Who's his agent? Damn, that's pretty good. That it is a huge, huge professional development opportunity for any agent, especially an agent like Brock has, who doesn't have, a huge stable of guys that he's representing. Remember, Brock was the last pick in the draft. You're not going to have, a super high-powered agent if you're that guy, because the agent's not wasting his time with you. But this is an opportunity for Kyle Strongen to show the world, look at me, look what I did for my guy. I can do it for you, and then potentially get some bigger clients, and on and on and on. I do think that has to be factored in when you're considering these negotiations and how they go.
I do think it's a two-way street. I wouldn't say it's necessarily an equal. Maybe the way you're talking is 2 lanes while the other way is just 1 lane. But being newer, I do feel like newer agents, there's a lot of things you can do in contracts to end up getting your money, but not have it hit right away. You can get very inventive in contracts. And I think the newer agents are the ones that tend to get more inventive. I think a lot of your older agents, they say, I have my formula. Here it is. This is my outline. This is what gets things done. It's my tried and true way. And they try to apply it to all their big name agents in their negotiations, or their big name players in their negotiations. So there's less thinking outside the box and less things get tough. So it is possible that this new agent's willing to come in with something that is, wow, we haven't really seen that before. And that helps get things done. It's also, Purdy strikes me as the type of guy that's going to say, when they offer this much, I'm taking it. Don't mess around on this. Like, well, I don't think this is going to be a case of the agent is playing stupid games costing the player and the player doesn't intervene.
That's another part of this, is because ultimately the agent works for the player. Is Brock Purdy the type of guy that says, hey, I'm going to let my agent deal with the contract. I'm going to worry about the football. Let me know when it's done. Some guys are like that, but there are other guys that are saying, like, hey, give me the offer. Take it. I don't care. You work for me. Take it. Like, you can do that. He's your agent. He does work for you, but it depends on the player being willing to do that. Is Brock the kind of guy that works with his agent like that? I have no idea. None of us do. I don't really know. He seems like all in on football. He talked about wanting to have it done by phase 1, and maybe that's when he'll start to push back on his agent if it's not done by then. We don't know, but that is part of this too.
I will say this as a good sign. Brock Purdy became the face of the NFL's biggest sponsor. That would be a good indication that his agent is very good at creating contacts and talking to people, because becoming Toyota's lead man in the NFL, that's a job every single player in the NFL would have accepted, right? That's like the biggest sponsor that gets your face out there right now is that deal, because it's an official NFL sponsor where you're getting to do a bunch of official NFL things with that sponsor. So that to me is a very good indication that this agent knows what he's doing.
And, well, okay. What about, let me see how I want to put this. There was a moment when Dez Bryant was negotiating his contract with the Cowboys where Jerry Jones called him up to the suite and was trying to essentially negotiate the contract with Dez Bryant. And Des looked at him and was like, Jerry, what would happen if you tried to cover me out on the field? And Jerry said, you would annihilate me. And Des said, yeah, so why am I going to try to negotiate with you? You're going to annihilate me. This is your field, so I'm not going to do that. The 49ers have experience negotiating big contracts, plenty of them recently, even big quarterback contracts, right? They did the Garoppolo deal. If Purdy has an agent that's not used to these kind of negotiations, do you think there's an opportunity for the Niners to sort of put one over on him, or at least, give the Niners would have the upper hand because he simply hasn't done this before?
Is there a possibility? Yes. I would doubt it, because if that's the type of agent he was, where he could make a huge mistake and not understand things, be ignorant basically to the way big NFL contracts work, Purdy would have moved on. Like, Purdy could pick his agent right now, right? Any person he calls right now would take Purdy on as a client. So I think this agent must be like one of those guys that's going to be a top agent, because why would Purdy stick with him? How would Purdy get the Toyota deal that everybody wanted, right?
Yeah, I feel like that's different, though.
It's a little different. Getting sponsorships is, I think, a lot about knowing how to get contacts, right? That's a little bit of a different situation, because it's, you don't have me, but you could. Whereas this one is, you control my future. I'm trying to get the most money out of you, and you know it, right? But I feel this feels like, to me, a situation of Purdy is not going to demand top of the market. And if things are going south, Purdy will intervene and say, let's all get in a room and we're going to hash this out, and we're going to take whatever the best we can get at the end of that day.
I think, well, first of all, I'll say from personal experience, getting sponsorships, difficult. Just throw that out there for people. I think there's a big difference between Toyota coming to you and wanting to throw a bunch of money at you to be a sponsor, and a team who, if they could, would screw you over and rob you blind and take as much money out of your pocket as possible, because that's their goal with every player, essentially. And I don't know that Brock Purdy would know how good at this type of thing Kyle Strongen is until he goes through it, right? Like, when, there's a feeling like when you buy a car, the reason why so many people get ripped off on cars is because as human beings, we don't have a ton of experience buying cars, right? The average person doesn't buy 7, 8, 9, 10 cars in their life. You only do it a few times. Whereas you don't get ripped off at the grocery store and places like that as much, because you've been shopping a billion times. You have more experience at it. Well, Kyle Strongen doesn't have experience going through this type of big contract negotiation, and neither does Brock Purdy. So they might not know what they don't know until it's too late.
Except for, this is kind of a situation of, hey, I'm going to go to the grocery store, but I just spent the last 3 hours researching the prices online for the exact product I want, and I know exactly what's out there, because they know exactly what's out there. All they have to do is go research the contracts that exist and decide, all right, we're going to shoot for something along these. We like this type of escalator. We like this type of clause in there. We don't like these, right? And they can look at all the contracts that exist, mix and match. They know the going market rate. They know what is the top of the market, and they can then, it's almost like a copy and paste. Take the things you like from contracts, delete the things you don't like from contracts, create one that you then take as your first offer. Everything's known for these agents on what contracts exist out there.
Yeah, just like you can research prices on a car and what cars have, you could do all sorts of research there. It's different when you actually have to negotiate it and go through it, and the timelines of things and the timelines of deals and when things become guaranteed and when they don't. I'm not saying, the Niners are going to make Brock sign a contract for $10 million a year, but
it will not be the Kaepernick contract.
Right. The Kaepernick contract was insane. Moonman Ed says that agent also represents Trevor Lawrence, so I see the vision. I don't think that's accurate. I don't think
so either.
He used to, Purdy's agent used to work at the same agency that has Lawrence, and now he doesn't. I think that's the reality of the situation right now. But I'm sure, he has friends in the agent business. I'm sure he knows people. I'm sure he's talking to people and all of that stuff. but this is going to be, uncharted territory for him. Dude on YouTube says Purdy is set for life because of Purdy. He needs to stop being greedy. I think you're saying the agent maybe is set for life because of Purdy. Stop being greedy.
Okay, that makes more sense. We don't know how this agent is.
Yeah.
We don't know if this is a situation of Purdy is somebody that knows numbers well and is basically saying this is what we're going to do, and he's controlling the situation, or if it's like you said, kind of a Nick Bosa type thing where he says, "You go handle that. I have no interest. I'll go film a couple commercials while you're doing it. Leave me alone. Let me know when it's time to show up with my pen and sign."
Dude has clarified. He says Purdy is set for life because of Toyota. He needs to stop being greedy. It's not about being greedy. It's about getting what you're worth. There's a difference there. And I think that fans need to stop telling athletes how much money they should want or should be okay with. Like, you wouldn't let anybody do that for you, so you shouldn't do it for anybody else.
How long until we see a Purdy Subway commercial?
I don't know.
That's the one I've been waiting on. It's like he hasn't had a Subway commercial yet. What kind of quarterback could he really be?
How much free advertising have we given Subway on this pod? If anybody's getting a Subway deal, it should be us.
Yeah, Happy Gilmore here.
Yeah, well, there's a new one coming out.
Yeah, well, they're filming it now. It's going to be a little while. I think it's not until next year or late this year. But the dude also did have a comment earlier that I kind of liked, and it's something worth talking about. No way in heck it happens, but I do think it's kind of interesting. And he said, trade Purdy for Garrett, and then Super Bowl window will be open again. There's no way that happens, but it is kind of interesting because I actually think maybe I kind of would prefer doing something like trade Purdy for Garrett, have Garrett and Bosa, and then sign Kirk Cousins while drafting somebody in the first or second round to be your future quarterback, right? I might actually prefer that, just spitballing here, but I might prefer that over just signing Purdy.
So I asked Jason and Steph that question on Tuesday. Like, if you had to give up Brock Purdy to get Myles Garrett, would you do it? They both said no. I was sort of like, hold on, I don't know that we can just dismiss this out of hand, was my thing. Now, obviously, you would create a massive hole on your team for sure. But if it's like Purdy and a first-round pick in 2026, then I'm like, oh, that's really interesting. Yeah. Oh, man, I might do it. The Athletic has an article. Let me see if I can find it now. But basically, it was like potential teams that could make a deal for Myles Garrett. It was 10 proposals that would work. And they had a writer from each of the teams in the proposals, like write up the proposal. So, of course, I ran to it. Let me see. Are the 49ers in it? Okay. I could not believe the offer that they proposed to get Myles Garrett. And it was Matt Barrows. So, this is not like Joe Schmo. This is a guy that actually covers the team and has for a while. The offer was a 2025 first, a 2026 first, and Jake Moody. And let me tell you, if that was the offer to get Myles Garrett, I would run, not drive or fly. I would run to San Francisco, pack Jake Moody's bag, and personally drive him to Cleveland myself. There is no way that the Browns would do that deal.
I think the starting point with Myles Garrett is 3 first-round picks. That Cleveland's not going to budge until it's that. You're talking about an NFL Defensive Player of the Year, still in the prime of his career, with a contract that if you acquire it, becomes one of the cheapest in the NFL for the acquiring team. Cleveland is on the hook for all of the money on the deal. I looked at it before we came on. I mentioned a little bit to you, but basically Myles Garrett already has a fully restructured contract for what you try to restructure to save money on the salary cap. He has a vet minimum salary every year. Everything else is in signing bonus. What that means is when you acquire a player in trade, the signing bonus has already come and gone, right? So you don't pay any of that signing bonus. You only pay the salary that remains and any potential like performance bonuses and stuff. He literally would cost the acquiring team $1.2 million on the salary cap. Like, that is by itself, assuming Myles Garrett doesn't demand a new contract, would be worth an extra first-round pick by itself.
Could you convince Myles Garrett to wait till after the season's over to request a new deal?
Only he can answer that.
Right. And who the heck knows? And maybe he would be willing to, depending on the team that he went to, right? I mean, there's all sorts of factors that we don't know about. But I don't have sources, but I feel like I can say with 100% accuracy, John Lynch has called. They've inquired. Like, they've investigated. I'm not saying he's going to do it. I'm saying I feel really confident he's picked up the phone and said, hey, what would it take?
I'll throw another scenario out there. Nick Bosa for Myles Garrett straight up.
No. The point is to get both of them together.
I know, but would you?
I mean, yeah, if you're asking, is Myles Garrett better than Nick Bosa? Yeah, 100%.
I would too. If they said, we'll give you Myles Garrett, you give us Nick Bosa, who would be incredibly popular in Cleveland because he's from Ohio State. If I'm the Niners, I say, okay. Look, I don't know Nick Bosa's exact salary cap hit if they were to make that trade. Maybe that makes it not worth it because too much salary bonus. I would have to look for sure. But if it's going to be a roughly equivalent salary cap hit with the dead cap and Myles Garrett's small salary, it's no question. Garrett is the better player. And while he has injury risk, it's not as scary as like Nick Bosa's hip stuff.
He's had quite a few injuries. Yeah, Myles Garrett is better. That's what makes the whole deal so attractive, right? Imagine acquiring a move or doing a move that makes Nick Bosa your second best pass rusher. That would be amazing. That would be a fantastic addition. That's why you want to do it. Bosa's contract numbers are up on the screen. If he's traded pre-June 1st, he has a $42 million dead cap hit. So that's not happening, which...
Well, go to the post-June because Cleveland saves a lot of money doing post-June as well. So there you go. The Niners save a ton of money doing post-June, and Cleveland currently, I think it's like they lose $10 million in cap space if they trade Garrett pre-June 1st, but post-June they save like $7 million. So it would, in this theoretical situation that almost definitely won't happen, both teams would agree, yeah, let's do post-June 1st.
Bosa is a good restructure candidate also. He has no guaranteed money after this season. So
after this season, yes.
Yeah.
Those last 3 seasons have huge salaries that will get turned into salary bonuses.
I ain't mad at it. But no, I'm not trading for Myles Garrett unless Nick Bosa remains on the team. The other thought is, could you put some players in the deal to minimize the draft pick hit, right? Could you do like first this year, Debo, and I don't know, Jake Moody? Hell, Matt Barrows threw him in the deal. Like, could you include some players in there so you would have to give up fewer draft picks?
Could you? That depends on Cleveland's value, right? That's an answer that only the Cleveland brass can answer. Do they value Debo? I would imagine Debo is one of those players that there are at most 10 teams that are like, if we have any chance of getting him, we get him. And then there are 20 some teams that say, I have no interest in him. Because some teams are going to be willing to restructure the offense to get him the ball in space. And some are like, I don't have an interest in a wide receiver that can't create their own space. Right. So Debo is one of those, depending on what team you talk about, they would say, I wouldn't trade a 7th round pick. And some would probably say, I would trade my 2nd round pick right now.
Yeah, the 2nd round pick, I have no attachment to, for sure. Bazzyman points out if Cleveland's going to trade Myles Garrett, they're going to want to do it before the draft so they could use the picks. So they're not going to wait till post-June to make a trade.
We have seen other teams in the past. They announce the trade publicly so that both teams are kind of forced to do it. And both teams have huge incentive to do it, right? To then follow through after June 1st and actually file the paperwork to have it done. But they announce it ahead of time. They just don't officially process it. So because if either team backed out, not only would that be like a massive problem for that GM to ever negotiate with anybody else, but it's also, they have set up their rosters at this point because the draft has happened. free agency has happened. They have to be able to do those deals post June 1st, or it destroys their cap.
But the point is, you don't get the benefit of the picks that you would acquire for Myles Garrett. You can't use them until 2026.
Yeah, that's true.
If you
Yeah,
wait.
that's true.
So anyway, we'll have time, but pretty soon this is going to become a thing because the combine's happening and they're all together at the combine. Agents are there, GMs are there, some coaches are there, although less and less, but everybody's there and they're all going to get drunk together essentially at St. Elmo's Steakhouse or maybe the Ruth's Chris that's over there, and they'll talk and things will happen. You'll hear rumors. Remember, we heard rumors last year about potential deals with the 49ers. So that stuff is going to bubble up to the surface. So get ready for that.
Basically 1 week from today is when that kicks off.
Is it really a week from today?
Yeah, you have the Super Bowl. Well, I'm talking about like you have the Super Bowl, and then usually there's a day or two kind of hangover before the NFL hot stove offseason really gets going, right? And so I would say a week from today, maybe a week from yesterday, is when like you start getting all of these offseason rumors going.
So we'll be here with you for that, of course, as we always are. So give us a like and a subscribe. I'm seeing that Fred Warner was on Radio Row today doing some speaking, and he apparently joined the Pat McAfee show, and he was talking about Christian McCaffrey's injury. Now, I haven't heard this audio, so let's take a listen together.
Did you guys know about Christian?
No.
We had no idea, dude.
No.
We had no clue. I think whenever that popped up out of nowhere for us, they were like Achilles arthritis, I think. It pops up on both legs. That came out of nowhere for us. For you, if it came out of nowhere, obviously that's incredibly startling, but what is the mindset going into the season? And do you feel like that's just kind of what the season became?
Yeah, I mean, it came out of nowhere for him, honestly. I feel like I've talked to him throughout all the offseason since he's been here, and he felt great. He got married and was on cloud 9 thinking that, all right, we're coming back to win a Super Bowl, coming off an Offensive Player of the Year type of year last year. And so it was a shock to him, shock to us. He's one of our best players, if not the best. And so I'm excited for him going into this season to just get back healthy, right? Get back out on the field. We need him. We need him in order to be successful. You saw it. And then obviously dealing with a bunch of other injuries this past season. We just got to wipe that. Put that away. That didn't happen.
Save time and money in your brain.
Save time and money. And man, save stress off of my back and just go ahead and eliminate that.
No, I don't like that last thing he said, Levin. It did happen. Don't ignore it and throw it away and act like it didn't happen. It did happen, and it happened for a reason, and injuries weren't the only reason. They have to acknowledge their shortcomings and their part in the 6-11 season last year. I really hope they don't just flush it like that.
I think he's talking from a player perspective. The addressing the situation and like getting better players, that's a team deal. That's a front office thing. That's a coaching thing. So he's not going to be part of that. From a player perspective, they absolutely have to say all those injuries and all the crap that happened last year, we just got to do what we can this offseason to be in the best possible position for our individual selves to succeed. And if everybody has that mindset this year and doesn't dwell on what happened last year, then maybe we have a chance next year. Like that the players have a different perspective than the coaching and the GM.
I guess, but what I don't want to hear from the players is we'll be okay. Like if they lose week 1 next year, like, we'll be okay. I want urgency right out of the gate because you just went through a 6-11 season. You see how it can spiral quickly and get away from you. I don't want them to act like we know who the team that we are. No, you're not. You're a 6-11 team. That's who you are. It's a what have you done for me lately league. I don't care that you were good in 2023 or 2022 or any of that. I hope that they have an urgency next year that honestly I feel like we never really saw last season.
I don't think we've ever seen it, honestly. I don't think this is a team. I don't think Kyle Shanahan is the type that pushes that type of philosophy of we're desperate. You know what I mean? I don't think he ever thinks they're desperate.
Why not? What's wrong with desperation? Sometimes you need a little desperation, man.
I don't disagree. I just don't think that is how Kyle Shanahan is wired.
Yeah, well, change your wiring, dude. You were 6-11 last year. Let's take a listen to a little more of Fred Warner with Pat McAfee.
And you said he's one of our best players, if not our best player. The reason why it's not easy to say best player is because you guys have so many good players.
Yeah, exactly.
So many good players. Legitimately, that's why the season is we're watching along.
Yeah.
Like that had to be, I don't want to say excruciating, but that had to be a miserable time. I just punter, okay, on team. Just punter on team. Whenever Peyton was quarterback and that whole crew was there,
Right.
we went undefeated my first year.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Until they chose to lose. And once again, I'm very small. Then we win again.
No.
Then we win again. And then we go 2-14 and almost lose every single game. Life is miserable whenever you're losing. Then we get back to being good. And when Andrew gets there again, thank God Andrew comes in there. But it's like when you're losing, life is terrible. You guys haven't experienced that much, right?
Exactly. It's different when you've only experienced losing because that's the standard.
Bingo.
But we've developed a standard of winning. We've been to NFC championships year after year, 2 Super Bowls. Obviously haven't surpassed, the mountaintop to hoist that trophy, but we're so close, right? And so this was the season. This was the one we were going to do it. And then all of a sudden everything falls into shambles and it's like, damn, I thought we were past this. Like my rookie year, I think we only won like 6 games. I thought we were past this, but
hey, it's good for you though. Maybe long run, you'll be able to look back on it. It sucks right now. But
it humbles the hell out of you and you learn from it and then you grow from it to ultimately get back next year.
Yeah, we can't wait to watch you guys back.
Yeah, it only humbles you if you acknowledge what caused it, though. That's the thing. If you just say, oh, it's a fluke, it doesn't matter, we're still good, then you don't get humbled and you don't get the benefit of that.
Well, let me ask you, what caused it?
I mean, injuries is definitely part of it, but I also think hiring a crap defensive coordinator is part of it. The erosion of the talent on defense was a huge factor as well. It wasn't just one thing. It was a variety of things, and they all snowballed to bite us in the ass.
And the point I'm getting at is those are all front office problems, right? What do you want Fred Warner to say? Hey, our roster sucks. John Lynch needs to do more. He's not going to say that. He's not going to criticize people he doesn't know if they're going to be teammates next year, right? So he just has to say we got to get back on it, and we believe we can. All the issues were, yes, injuries happen, but you can kind of predict certain injuries. Like some of it was bad luck. Some of it was you counted on certain people, like the whole Dre Greenlaw. You counted on Greenlaw making it back, basically, and it blew up in your face. But then it was also the coaching wasn't good enough, right? There was some issues there. And it was a lot of things like depth-wise. Like you said, the roster has eroded. The depth is gone.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's on the front office to get that depth so that they could have stomached and survived, played through some of those injuries. That was the problem. It's the depth was gone and they had a bunch of injuries, so that depth exposed them. Well, that is 100% a front office problem. Nothing a player can do about it.
But the players also could have been better, right? Deebo Samuel sucked last year. That's not on the front office. That's
are what you are at this point. Yes, Deebo Samuel sucked last year. Guess what? He had his average year in the NFL. That is what he is.
Right. Jair Brown was not good last year. Talanoa Hufanga was not good. I know he was banged up a lot of the time, but he was not that good last year. Like there are some individual performances from players that need to be better, period. So that's why I say it was on the players. It was on the coaches. It was on the front office. It was everybody. Nobody was immune from the suctitude that we saw last year.
I agree, and I think Fred Warner agrees, but you can't expect him to come out saying that to the national media. Hey, our players suck. We need to be better, right? He's not going to criticize his teammates. That's not the type of leader he is.
I'm not saying he's got to criticize teammates. All I'm saying is just don't say, we're flush. It doesn't matter. Last year doesn't count. We're going to be right back on top. Like that's not the message that you need to be sending. And that is not the mindset that you need to have. Just don't say that. Just say, we got to get back on track. We got to be better next year. That's all true too. You can say that. I just feel like it's more likely that the message that the team is going to send and Kyle is going to send is, don't worry about that. That's not who we are. We're fine. We're fine. We're fine.
That's on Kyle then, right? The players, like I said, from a player perspective, you have to flush it because you can only control yourself. They can't control whether other players are going to be better. Fred Warner can't control whether Deebo Samuel can catch the damn ball and get open, right?
Well, apparently nobody can. Somebody said, did Fred Warner and Debo have the same number of touchdowns last year? No, Debo had slightly more. He had 4 total touchdowns. Fred Warner had 1. So, like, think about that. They almost did have the same number of touchdowns.
Yeah, I really wish they would move on from Debo, but they're not going to.
Are they going to move on from Juice?
No.
Oh, I think you're right. Unfortunately, I think you're right.
I don't think they're going to do a true restructure. I think they're just going to bring it back.
Yeah.
I think they're looking at it as we can make Juice take a little bit less. We can bring everybody back. We got a lot of cap space, so we can improve that depth and get a starter or two. And then we have a lot of draft capital, so we'll fill some holes through the draft too. We'll come back with all that great roster we were ready for last year, but everybody will be healthy at the start of the season. But clearly they haven't learned their lesson when it comes to that. But they see it as we have all these great players. Let's keep those great players. We have a ton of cap space. Let's use that in free agency. Let's use our draft picks. We'll come back with the same great starters with a couple improvements and then a ton of depth.
Do you have confidence, though, that they are going to have another draft class like they just had? Because obviously that's what we're all rooting for, and it would be phenomenal. But it's also really hard to do, especially to have 2 of those classes back to back. The Niners draft class last year was very good. It's hard to do that 2 years in a row.
The 49ers draft class last year looks really good. I don't like saying draft classes were really good because there's a lot of players who look pretty good as rookies, and then teams adjust to them, find a flaw, and they're incapable of improving it. Jair Brown looked great as a rookie. We all thought he would be a good starter. He was one of the worst starters for the 49ers this past season, right? So I want to make that point that last year's draft class verdict is still out. But I think this year it's a little bit easier because if you take an offensive tackle with your first pick, they're going to start and they're going to be a slight improvement at the very least. And that will cover up whatever happens in the rest of the draft if it's not good, right? I think they have an easy path to making the draft look halfway decent.
I don't agree with that. What if the guy sucks?
How many top 11 drafted offensive tackles outright are horribly suck? There's ones that get criticism, but they still ended up being like 5-6 year starters in the NFL.
I don't know. We've seen the Niners blow a lot of their early picks. I'm not just going to assume that whoever they pick is going to be good. And keep this in mind too, Levin, because you know how they are with rookies. Like, they may pick a guy who may actually be good, but they're going to give deference and they're going to give a huge edge to Colton McKivitz because he's the guy that's there and he's a veteran. It's going to be really hard to unseat Colton McKivitz. I can already hear Kyle Shanahan saying it now. Even if they pick a guy and even if that guy is good, they may not see the field unless there's an injury ahead of them, which is how they lucked into Dominic Pooney last year, because there's no way Dominic Pooney is a starter right out of the gate without Spencer Burford and John Feliciano getting hurt.
I will say that I was looking into the draft, and there are a ton of tackles at the top of this draft that are considered tackles / guard. You know what I mean? They're really talented. They should be a tackle, but they're a little bit small for a tackle. You know what I mean? So they might end up being a guard instead, is kind of the thing, where I could see the Niners saying, we're going to draft one of those guys. He'll be our left guard right off the bat. And then whenever Trent Williams goes, we'll try to slide him out to be the left tackle. That scares me because the amount of people that can play guard in the NFL at a above average ability and then slide to left tackle and still be above average is extremely rare.
Right. Oscar Alfaro says, just don't reach on a tackle and don't draft a kicker / punter. Yeah, I don't.
We need a new kicker and punter, so don't be shocked.
You don't need to draft one, but I agree. I don't care if they take a tackle in round 1. I don't care if they take a guard. I don't care if they take a defensive end or a defensive tackle. Like, I have no preference. Get someone good, first of all, regardless of position. But second of all, like, to me, it doesn't have to be a tackle in round 1. You have so much work to do along the line of scrimmage, period, on both sides of the ball. Take the best player that plays in one of those spots. That's my official draft position in round 1.
I am totally fine with an edge or an offensive tackle. If they go elsewhere, that's where I start to, I don't know that I like that. Unless it's something like, I would have to look, because I actually haven't really looked at that position much because I don't anticipate it being in the running for 11th overall. But let's say Drake Greenlaw gets offered a huge contract somewhere and they strike out on all these linebackers. Is there a linebacker that's a day one starter to plug in there at 11? At that point, you would have to consider that. And if they've struck out on all these free agent starting caliber linebackers, I would be all for it, right? You kind of have to at that point.
Did you see who Did you see who Matt Mayoko mocked to the 49ers in round 1?
I did not see Mayokos, no.
It would make 49ers fans' heads explode. Ty Warren, the tight end from Penn State. Can you imagine if Kyle took a backup tight end in the first round with the 11th pick? Oh my God. It's a non-zero chance that it happens. Chris Forrester just told us that the Niners' philosophy is get the guys that can score touchdowns and figure out the offensive line later in the draft. I mean, that would be gross mismanagement by the 49ers to do that.
My question would be, can he be a tight end / fullback?
Even if he can.
I know. I'm not saying I would like it at all, but that at least makes it be a slight bit more logical that, okay, now you can move on from Juice.
You can move on from Juice right now. You can just move on from Juice right now. Oh my God. They did such a good job of selling us Kyle Juszczyk when he was first signed to that astronomical deal that now people think that no one else on the planet could do what Kyle Juszczyk does. That he's completely and utterly irreplaceable. And the walls would come crumbling down if they didn't have Kyle Juszczyk on the team.
Yeah. I mean, it's a situation of, yes, Kyle Juszczyk is unique in that he can run some routes, right? But the actual benefit to him being there and doing that is negligible at best. You could argue it's a net negative because he's on the field and he's taking the spot of potentially another wide receiver or tight end who would actually be able to do a bit more.
Right. He catches like 4 passes a year and everybody loves him. Daza0187, thanks for the super chat. Daza says, if you're using your first to draft a defensive end, why not just trade it for Myles Garrett?
Because it takes 3 first-round picks to get Myles Garrett.
Right, because it's going to take more than one pick, and the guy that you get, while likely not going to be anywhere near as good as Myles Garrett, is also not going to be anywhere near as expensive as Myles Garrett. So
Myles Garrett, I would say the low that Cleveland would pull the trigger on trading him is a first and second this year, and then a first next year. I would say that's the low. Otherwise, I mean, he is locked up for the next 3 years. So yeah. Cleveland can say, we're not trading you. Nobody wants to offer what you're worth. We're not doing it. And
they should do it to somebody. Yeah, I think the Lions are going to offer a king's ransom, and they should, by the way, if they were smart. But if you're Cleveland, there's no reason to keep Myles Garrett. None. You're not building up your team enough to be able for him to be a factor on a contending team, because your team is screwed and they're going to be bad for years to come. So the best way to kickstart your rebuild and get good, the fastest way, is to trade Myles Garrett for a bunch of assets. So I definitely think that they're moving him.
I will say I felt old as hell when I read Myles Garrett's little post, and he said something like he spent 8 years here, and I was like, good God, he's been in the NFL 8 years.
Yeah, exactly. The Unfaithful Perspective says, Levin, can the Niners even bring Cousins in for a visit? It's not like he's a free agent. In that case, I think if Kansas City is anywhere near the building, he's staying. Or if Kirk Cousins, rather, is anywhere near the building, he's staying.
So I went on to say that, yes, currently he is an Atlanta Falcon. However, there is no chance the Atlanta Falcons pay him what's remaining on his deal. And I don't think he has any trade value whatsoever. So he will be released. He will be a free agent.
I would think so. Mike asks, what's going on with Dre Greenlaw? We don't know. Fred Warner and Nick Bosa said they both want him back. Bosa said that Robert Saleh's pushing hard to keep Dre Greenlaw. Yeah, did he watch Dre Greenlaw last year, or did he just have the mental memory of Dre Greenlaw, what he used to be? Because dude played 34 snaps last year and that's all he could muster. So it's clearly not the same guy. We'll keep an eye on all of that stuff for you, of course, as we always do. But we didn't get to do the NFL show earlier this week. So let's just sneak in some Super Bowl talk here, 11. The spread is holding fast. It has not changed in a while. Still Kansas City by 1.5 points. Has your opinion on the game changed?
I go back and forth on who I think is going to win this game. I do think it's going to be more of a defensive battle than people assume. Now, I thought that the first time these two teams matched up in the Super Bowl, and it turned into a shootout. So maybe the two teams just know how to counter each other. But, I mean, you look at it, Kansas City's offense has struggled all year. Philly's offense is a dominate the clock and make the game short type of offense. And both defenses are really good. So to me, this reeks of a surprise defensive battle that's, 20-17, 24-20. Who wins that probably comes down to who gets the ball last, which is annoying.
Vic Fangio up against Steve Spagnuolo is a hell of a defensive coordinator battle in the Super Bowl. Regardless of who you pick to win the game, if you're going to bet on it, please do it with BetUS. You can receive 150% on your first deposit and 125% on your second and third deposit up to $2,000. Just use code YouTube150. And remember, with BetUS, you get 24/7 personalized service, 365 days a year, live wagering on all major games, and you get 10% back on your net losses twice a year. God knows I've had some net losses this year, although for the most part, Michelle and I have done way better than normal, I'll say, which was a welcome surprise in this year.
What's your favorite Super Bowl prop bet?
I always like what color of the Gatorade will be doused on the winning coach, which, by the way, if you're keeping track, orange is the most common color. So just keep that in mind when you make your prop bets for the Gatorade. I like that one. I bet on like a ridiculous amount of stuff. I bet on the coin toss, which tails more often than not. It's been tails in the Super Bowl, if you're keeping track. I like to bet on, I like everything, every like layer of the game, so that all throughout I have something to pay attention to, unless the 49ers are in which case that's a whole other ball of wax.
You know what I hope there's a prop bet for this year, but I haven't gone to look yet?
What's that?
How many holding calls on the Chiefs? Because that would be one, they would get action on it. So it makes sense for a sports book to put that one out there. Like I say, it's somewhat in jest, but that is one that would probably make them good money, because it is kind of it's one that you could probably get inside info on if you're the casino, right? You kind of work your reffing contacts. Is the NFL saying to call holding in the Super Bowl? Or are they saying let the players decide it? You know what I mean? The NFL does things like that.
Did you see all the officials came out and Goodell came out? It's preposterous to say that we're helping. It's like, guys, calm down. You're helping stars, and Mahomes is the star of stars. Like, there doesn't need to be like a formal conspiracy where everyone sits down in a cloak in a room lit with torches and how will we help Patrick Mahomes win the Super Bowl this year? Like, that's not what's going on. Quarterbacks always get protected. Mahomes is the biggest quarterback, and let's be honest, he baits the official. Like he slides late and all that other stuff. And I just love it. The officials are acting so bent out of shape about this. It's hilarious to me.
I'm sorry. I had to laugh there because your little starting there made me think of the king of the underworld, Jar Jar Binks people, because he always talks that way, right? And then you ended with like a little of the Emperor Palpatine with your evil.
Your rebel friends.
Yeah, so I thought you were like doing an addition here. You're going to branch out from podcaster to, a new Disney Star Wars cartoon show where you're voicing them.
Your feeble defensive game plans are nothing compared to the power of the dark side.
I think we all know who the dark side is in this situation.
Well, that's true. Love me a little Ian McKellen. Michelle and I will be here on Friday, by the way, with all of our Super Bowl bets. So please join us for that. We're also going to be live on the Bleacher Report app tonight. Michelle and I always do a show. If you follow us on X, you got a little treat of a funny little thing that Michelle said that as soon as it came out of her mouth, she wished she could reel it back in. But of course she can't. It lives forever, and it'll make its appearance on the year-end best of as well. So you should check out those shows on Bleacher Report. Levin, what gets done first, a Myles Garrett trade or a Brock Purdy contract?
I'll say the Brock Purdy contract because that one has two sides mutually wanting to get it done. My sense is Cleveland has zero interest in trading the only good thing on their team, right? Like, what's going to keep those fans at bay, right now? Myles Garrett. That's the only thing there, right?
Unless like you trade him and then you could sell Hope and Hopium if you get a bunch of picks, but hopefully it's the Brock deal and hopefully that thing is done soon. That's going to do it for this edition of the show. Please leave us a 5-star rating and a review on Apple Pods. Like and subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. Click the bell so you know when we're live, which is every single weekday and after all Niners breaking news. Thank you, Levin, for joining us as always. Thanks again to BetUS for sponsoring this video. Once again, if you want to sign up for BetUS, use promo code YouTube150. Last question before we go, Levin. What's your Super Bowl food that you eat that you must have during the game?
I don't have a must-have usually. Wings are typically what I end up doing, but I love nachos. If I can make a good set of nachos, maybe I will. Problem is nachos are hard to make good at home. Like it takes a lot of ingredients, so it gets costly quick. I don't have a must-have it, but I will probably end up with wings because generally when I'm watching football and I'm off, it's suddenly I have a craving for wings.
You know my philosophy, the 3 H's: Heineken, hot wings, Haagen-Dazs. Try it. You'll never be disappointed.
I will because it's Heineken.
Oh, all right. Goodbye.